Go.
So good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm really excited about this. Oh, I'm muted. Okay, unmuted. Hi, I'm going to start again. Hi, good morning, everyone. Excited to be here this morning. I'm Audrey Russo, President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Technology Council. And along with Shelby Mastovich on my team, I'd like to welcome you to CMO Insight Series. So now that we're living in this continuous COVID world, we're working on continuing to do the work that we've done over the years, this being our CMO, Chief Marketing Officer Insight Series. So we try to showcase the leaders who are doing amazing things across the landscape of Pittsburgh and sometimes around the nation and the globe. So we're thrilled to be hosting leaders today from Eaton Park Hospitality Group, All-Clad Metalcrafters, Primanti Brothers Restaurant and Bar, and PPG to discuss iconic branding this morning. So before I get started, I want to recognize our sponsor that made today possible, and that's C-Level. They're Pittsburgh's strategic marketing agency. They are a team of strategists, marketers, storytellers, designers, and developers who are committed to powering brands and providing businesses with the creative juice and strategic partnership they need to power performance and profitability across unique environments and industries. So we're very grateful for them, and each of you know that storytelling and marketing is continuing to be a priority in today's world in terms of COVID. And we're working on that as well. So next, I'm delighted to introduce our moderator for today's discussion. That's Christopher Evans. He's the head of brand and director of business development of PMI, a full service creator of broadcast commercials, web, social, OTT video content, motion design, animation, visual effects, color, and sound for major brands and creative agencies. PMI also creates feature films and full-length documentaries right here in Pittsburgh. Christopher leverages 25 years of creating award-winning brands, executive development skills, leadership, user-centered design, strategic business development, and experience to refresh brands, transform, and grow businesses. Also launches new services and gets into new markets. So you name it, in terms of brand and marketing, Christopher has been involved in that. So many of the things under his auspices have included national awards, as well as our Tech Council's Tech 50 Award for New Media Company of the Year. And he's also host of a popular digital educational show, Coffee With. And actually I was on that. That was a fun show. We had a good time. And advisory board member at Health IT Pittsburgh, founding member of Pittsburgh Entrepreneur Forum, and venture partner at the Pittsburgh Life Sciences Greenhouse. Christopher can now take the stage, and he is going to introduce our panelists. I am going to put myself on mute, but I just want to give you, some opportunities that we have a chat in here. Most of you will be on mute while our speakers present, but there'll be an opportunity for you to use the chat, and we will moderate that to make sure that people's questions get answered. So thanks everyone for being here. I'm going to go on mute, but I am staying for the entire show. So thanks everyone. I'm passing the baton to Christopher.
Thanks, Audrey, for that great welcome. I'm only sorry we're not able to do it in person, and we will definitely have you back on Coffee With, especially if we have to do a virtual one during these most interesting times. It's a true honor to be a part of this great panel today. I can't say enough about what the Tech Council has done, especially in transitioning to these types of informative virtual events, and what a group we have for you today. Some of the most iconic brands, and I'd argue iconic CMOs in the city. So please join me in providing a virtual welcome to them right now. First up, Wendy Dyer. Wendy is the Director of Strategic Marketing at All-Clad Metalcrafters, makers of high-quality cookware and kitchen accessories. They're out of Canonsburg. And they are a division of Group SEB, a $7 billion houseware leader. And Wendy leads All-Clad's product strategies and has previously served in capacities of brand at GNC, as well as a buyer at the May Company. You may remember Kaufman's department store. So some truly big league brand experience there. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you.
And Kevin O'Connell. You may have seen Kevin O'Connell over these years. He's been quite a presence with our friends at Eaton Park. He is the Chief Marketing Officer for the hospitality group. He's been there for 19 years. Prior to joining the company, Kevin spent 12 years as a consultant with Accenture and Anderson Business Consulting, working with more than 50 companies on strategy, customer experience, and technology projects. He's a graduate of the University of Notre Dame and has completed the Marketing and Sales Management Scholar Program at the Kellogg School of Management. Big brain right there. And best of all, he is Smiley's brand manager, and I'm told a proficient icer of Smiley cookies. Kevin, please validate that by sending a few of those up our way here, would you?
Got it. Thank you.
My pleasure, and thank you for being a part of this today. Next up is Bryan Iams. Bryan Iams is Vice President and Corporate and Government Affairs at PPG. He joined PPG back in October of 2012 as Vice President of Corporate Communications and Marketing, and assumed the additional responsibilities for government and community affairs shortly thereafter in March of 2013. Prior to joining PPG, Iams was Principal Advisor for Communications for FedEx Ground, and was also Head of Strategic and External Communications for Bayer Corp, Bayer Material Science here in North America. He also worked for 7 years at a global public relations agency, Burson Marsteller, now known as Burson Cohn and Wolfe, very well-respected PR firm. He's a native of Pittsburgh and has earned his bachelor's degree in English from the University of Pittsburgh and his master's in public management from Carnegie Mellon University. He currently serves as board chair of Visit Pittsburgh and was previously board president of Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh. Apparently I cannot read today. In 2020, Bryan was inducted into the PRSA Pittsburgh Renaissance Hall of Fame, and he is also a current member of the Arthur Page Society. Proud to call Bryan a wonderful friend and someone who I look up to a lot in the world of branding and marketing also. Good morning, Bryan.
Good morning, Christopher. Thanks.
My pleasure. And thank you for being a part of this great panel today. Last and certainly not least, Adam Golomb. Adam is at the helm of outreach efforts for Primanti Brothers Restaurant and Bar. I'm getting hungry just thinking about this. Not sure if that makes him Chief Marketing Officer or Chief Sandwich Guy or just Primanti's biggest advocate, but he is he's certainly in Primanti fandom. He grew up eating the sandwiches, as so many of us have, right? The French fry top sandwiches with his dad, and an honor he now shares with his 3 daughters. He has a very solid background in strategic leadership in the restaurant and grocery industries and drives marketing, concept evolution, and menu development for Primanti Brothers. Basically, in essence, what that means is he gets to have a lot of fun there. And he was previously with Giant Eagle. Everyone knows Giant Eagle, $10 billion grocery and convenience retailer, and a variety of marketing roles there, including running their $1 billion gift card marketplace. Before that, he was also with Eaton Park Hospitality Group in a variety of marketing roles, and received his Bachelor of Science in Hospitality Management from Johnson & Wales University and his Master's from Penn State. He is currently Lieutenant Governor of District 2 at the American Advertising Federation. Good morning, Adam.
Morning, Chris.
Nice to see you, and thank you for being a part of this today. All right. Well, let's get underway. And as Audrey mentioned, we're going to have an opportunity not only to go through some of the questions that I've prepared for our panelists today, but we've also crowdsourced a number of them, collected them from those of you who've put them forward. We'll be presenting a number of those, and we'll be taking them from the chat a little bit later on in this morning's presentation. So I guess if we're going to be talking about iconic brands, and in no particular order, but Wendy, I'm going to start with you. How does a brand, any brand, become iconic?
Well, I think it's oftentimes a brand doing something that no one has ever done before. But that doesn't have to be the case. What has to happen is it has to resonate in a way with the consumer that they've not seen before. So in our case, we bonded metal. We're a metal company. We started at Clad Metals. But we applied that technology to something in the kitchen and something that no one had ever done before. But it truly didn't become iconic until it started to apply into people's kitchens, and for them to see, you know, years ago, people just had these thin warping pans, and they saw something truly different. And someone who cooks every day really appreciated the benefit. So that connection with the consumer really is what made it iconic.
Makes a lot of sense. Bryan, over to you on this. PPG certainly has quite a global presence. What makes that brand iconic?
Yeah, I think what Wendy said, that consumer connection and doing things that others can't do is really critical. I think in PPG's case, one of the things that we lean back on is our history and heritage. So I think to become an iconic brand, you have to have a proven history where any of your customers knows that you've been around and you'll be around for a long time to come. In PPG's case, that's over 137 years. So I think it's the time and the heritage. I also think it's having a product that your customers trust. So we sell both on the B2B side and B2C side. So as a result, that presents different equations, but the one constant is trust. Both customers on both sides of those aisles trust our products. Third thing I would say, innovation. If you're not constantly innovating and constantly providing those customers with what's next, you'll lose the customer to your competitor. So innovation has played a critical role for us. So I would say those are some of the things, Christopher, from a PPG standpoint that we lean on as it relates to our brand and reputation.
Excellent stuff. Kevin, how about you? I mean, we certainly recognize the brand if you've ever spent any time in this region, but what do you think made Eaton Park become iconic?
I think, when I think about brands, the first thing is you can't be an iconic brand unless you do the basics well. So we have to serve good food at a good value with a smile. But I think that if you go back to the beginning, we have started with a need that the customer had, which at that time people used restaurants in 1949 when we opened as entertainment. And probably the first iconic thing we had is that we couldn't trademark Park and Eat. And so our founders said, well, we'll just call it Eaton Park. And so that kind of like, what, don't you park first and eat? That kind of constant reminder that it makes it memorable. But as Bryan said, related to trust, I think that you can't be around for 70 years. If you're a startup today, the market's going to be completely different in 70 years. And so you have to be intimate with your customer and evolve through the years. And so, in the 50s, eating was entertainment, and that's why you ate that's why it was fun to eat in your car. Who'd want to eat in your car now for entertainment? But as the market evolved, we gave up being a car hop. We gave up what we were to become what the customers needed. And I think the really long-term brands constantly evolve to serve the latest needs of their customers.
Excellent stuff. All right, Adam, I think you'd agree that Primanti's is pretty darn iconic. What makes it so?
Yeah, I mean, it started 87 years ago. And it started, there's stories. I think there's always a story. There's multiple stories of how this sandwich became about. From, the one that we try to lean on is that truck drivers, it was 3 a.m, you're driving a truck in the Strip District, and you don't have the ability to have your salad, your French fries, and your sandwich while you're driving your truck. So they shoved everything together into one sandwich, which created an iconic product. And from there, we've evolved. The brand went out of business in the 70s for a brief moment, and then was brought back to life by Jim Petrinos. And then we evolved again about 5 years ago with an outside investment. And I think that's key. We're 87 years old, but we try to act like we're 5 years old. And we try not to be stuck in history. I think when you look at the restaurant industry, there's lots of chains that didn't evolve, and they just don't exist anymore. I think that's key, is that you have a history, you have an iconic product, but you also evolve from it.
So going around our panelists on this, do you think there's a moment in time, a real pivotal point that transformed your business, that perhaps propelled it into the public's mind as something iconic? Wendy, when did All-Clad become the product you have to have in your kitchen, as we have here, by the way?
Well, thank you for your patience. But for us, things changed. We started in the 70s, and we were kind of like a secret brand. There was a brilliant gentleman named John Golomb, Mount Lebanon guy, and a metallurgist, and he loved food. So he would go into the kitchens and talk to the chefs. And so he was constantly trying to get the best product developed by putting the product in the chef's hands, giving it the toughest test of time. So we were a chef's brand, We, were locally at the Crate was one of our big customers. And we got placed at Bloomingdale's and Williams-Sonoma. That's when really make its mark. It's during the 80s, chefs, they started to have celebrity chefs. So Jacques Pepin, you had Julia Child at that time, and the publications like Food and Wine, Bon App, those started to come about, and it became more of a celebrity. That started in the 80s, and that's when people started to see, or they would see the professionals were just using it. Times were different. We didn't pay to place. Anyone who knew what they were doing had All-Clad, and people would make that connection and that association. So when the back of the kitchen started to become more visible, that's really when we became iconic to the consumer. And that connection between the professionals, it's good enough for the chef in the toughest test and the person who knows the best, then it's got to be great for me. And that proved to be true when they used it.
And I'll bet that was when you started seeing quite an uptick in wedding registry requests for your products too, right?
Well, at that point, I don't even think they had wedding registries.
No, it was probably even before that, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I was there with you. I remember it. Like Audrey said, 25 years. Where does it go?
Right,
but I digress. Okay, Kevin, going back over to you for a moment in time. I mean, that fascinating long history with Eden Park. Was there any pivotal moment where kind of the brand got over, as they say in my business?
Well, it started before I was born, but I heard it was pretty popular back then. But I think in the later days, the pivotal moment is obviously the smiley cookie icon. It was introduced in '86 just as a giveaway to kids. But in 1991 is when our creative director, or actually he was working for Ketchum at the time, but he said, hey, this could be your Mickey Mouse. And started converting Smiley, this cookie, into Smiley the icon, and also embodying it in the Place for Smiles. And so I think that kind of created this image of Eaton Park as a community place, a place to gather, a place to be together and as a family, whatever family means to you. But that icon is kind of the thing that binds it all together. And we've, as stewards of that, kind of brought it forward over time and kind of continued to foster that brand and spread it. And I think, it's hard to imagine Eaton Park today without the icon, what it would be. But
I see that smiley cookie right behind you there in your
collector
in your
of iconography. Yeah, collector smiley stuff. But it's also having to, again, doing the basics well, but having kind of that spirit on top of it. And not only in the restaurants, but in the community. And we give away, hundreds of thousands of smiley cookies every year, and being at the end of the Pittsburgh Marathon and being at the end of the Great Race, constantly spreading goodwill through that icon. And I think that has been really a difference maker for us.
That makes perfect sense. And, I often think when I think of Eaton Park, in addition to the nice experiences there and the smiley cookies, that iconic TV commercial that you had around the holidays that we see every year, that from the 80s, it still brings a smile to so many people's faces. Beautiful stuff when you can really etch your brand into people's memory forever like that.
Yeah,
so
not
Bryan,
many commercials that are actually a Christmas special. People look at it like a Christmas special.
Indeed. Yeah. It's Christmas when you see that commercial, for sure. Bryan, so obviously talking about shaping the globe in so many ways, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a few moments, but is there a moment in time when PPG sort of became the brand in your space?
Yeah, well, first off, I have to say I'm extremely hungry after hearing from Primanti Eaton Park, but I digress. I actually don't think there is a pivotal moment in PPG's history. I think it's a series of important moments and decisions at the company. If you think about PPG, it started over 137 years ago by two guys here in Pittsburgh who knew that the glass business was going to grow because of all the steel and infrastructure that Pittsburgh has been famously known for. And wherever there's steel in buildings, there needs to be windows. So they started a glass company. And then shortly after that, they acquired their first paint company. So if you really look at it, it started with 2 people, and today we're 47,000 people in more than 70 countries, 150 manufacturing facilities, and we paint and coat essentially everything from Harley Davidson to Apple products to Ferrari to Boeing to John Deere to Caterpillar. And it's this evolution, this sustainable evolution of change and growth at PPG that I think has strengthened its brand over the years. I mean, in the last decade, the company has made over 60 acquisitions around the world. That's a tremendous amount of change and growth at the company. And I think from the iconic brand standpoint, one of the measures that we use a lot is really our shareholders. And our shareholders have stuck with us and have counted on a dividend every quarter. And they have deemed us iconic because of their loyalty to the company from an investment standpoint. And the same with our customers. So I think we have a long way still to go. But I think this evolution of change and growth has really put meat around the brand and the reputation of the company. So more to come for sure, but it's been quite a journey so far.
Understandably. And as a matter of full disclosure, PPG is a very significant client for us at PMI. So that's music to my ears. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. We love helping you tell that story. Okay, Adam, moment in time for Primanti Brothers when it was not just a sandwich, but an experience?
Other than 9 weeks ago.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Yeah, I think,
unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you think about the Steelers of the 70s and a brilliant decision for us to partner with the Steelers and build a Primanti's inside Three River Stadium, which was way before its time of doing a branded concept in a stadium. And we get very much attached to Pittsburgh sports, both locally and nationally. And I think that took the sandwich from just a restaurant in the Strip District to this iconic sandwich around the country. You think about any time the Steelers are nationally televised, there's usually a picture of a sandwich being made on a grill right after it. So I think that's really, when you think about the moment in time, was the brilliance of negotiating a deal with the Steelers and during their run in the 70s to build a Primanti's inside Three River Stadium.
Well, you just sent a chill down my spine, in a good way. Memories of Three Rivers Stadium and those cold games being there with my dad. I wish we could go back and do it all over again one more time.
And that terrible Tau mascot with the fur on.
Yeah, I remember him. Yes. Talk about iconic, right? We need to bring him back.
We do.
If there'll even be fans in the stands. So obviously we're having a lot of fun talking about kind of the journey of these incredible brands and these incredible companies. But I'd be remiss if we didn't spend a few minutes talking about reality today on the ground, as much as I don't want to, because I think we're all burned out from it. Obviously, each of the companies here, all of our companies, all of our lives, have been deeply impacted by COVID-19 and its continued evolution on not only brands but operations of companies in our day-to-day lives. I would like to ask each of you now to spend a moment on how it's impacted your overall operations, and specifically the brand, kind of what you're doing to respond to it. Just for, a talking point, perhaps the supply chain, one area you could touch on. Interested to see how you're navigating these choppy waters. We'll just start, Bryan, perhaps with you, and work our way around.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So, for PPG, we actually have a facility in Wuhan, China. So this has been front and center for our company. Actually, since January, I've been involved from a communications and marketing standpoint and government affairs standpoint. It was probably the second week of January. We got notified from our colleagues at the Wuhan facility and our Asia Pacific leadership team that said that there was a virus, and the government there was asking businesses to shut down. And so it started there and then spread. And we have facilities in Italy, massive facilities in Italy and Spain, all throughout China, 14 different manufacturing facilities, and then all the way to Mexico, where it's increasing today in Mexico and Brazil. So this has been a big challenge for the company, and it essentially overnight, and I think that's what the others say, if shut down business immediately. So we had to really, from a communications marketing standpoint, had to pivot. We spent so much time over these last 3 months communicating to employees. As governments had different shelter-at-home orders, we had to interpret those and then communicate directly to employees in that respective region or in the states. Every one of our 50 states have had a completely different stay-at-home order, and we have employees in every single state in the United States. So all day, all night, communicating to those employees. And then to answer your last part of your question, Christopher, on, how do you protect the brand and what do you do with the brand during this time? And I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but we really looked at what our company purpose was. And our company purpose and tagline is to protect and beautify the world. So our paints and coatings, they protect surfaces and they beautify surfaces with the color of the paint. So we really focused actually on the protect piece, protecting our people, our customers, our communities, our suppliers, and that's been a really strong rallying cry from a brand perspective on how we're protecting. And we're doing that by donating. Our foundation is heavily involved around the world, and we spent a lot of time really living our purpose and communicating that purpose to all of our stakeholders. So maybe I'll leave it at there for the moment.
That's really, truly excellent perspective. And having watched a lot of this, from behind the scenes of PPG, I can say you've really been a leader in not only handling this with your global employees, but also the communications in which you've deployed continuously on almost a daily and hourly basis to your employees and suppliers. It's been really impressive. Adam, we'll go up to you on this. COVID's impact on Primanti Brothers, obviously profound. What can you share with us?
I think we started seeing it. We have an investor that has operations around the world they've invested in. So we started getting vibes from them early on. They have some heavy European investments, that there was something coming. And we started thinking about it. I remember sitting in a room talking about hand sanitizer. And didn't think, we all thought it was going to be 2 weeks. Of this.
14 days, right?
Yeah, we made decisions really fast. I think that was probably, as I look back on it, we were, as an executive team, extremely decisive, extremely fast, really focused on 2 things: protecting our people and protecting the brand, and weathering the storm outward. So a lot of decisions fast. Hindsight, I think we made over the last year a heavy investment in technology. We invested in upgrading our takeout platform, adding delivery, adding a new loyalty program to the platform. And all those things have been really powerful for us to help us weather the storm. And really the technology, I think, has been what's allowed us to really outperform the industry. And now we're starting to open restaurants. We opened 2 restaurants, and it's really interesting to watch. Sales are pretty close to back to normal.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we have 2 restaurants that have opened. We have 5 more opening this week. We hope to be serving liquor drinks to go, maybe today. The governor will sign the bill that's sitting on his desk. But we've really
fingers
pivoted.
crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. But we've tried to have fun with it also. We gave away free beer one day. We've done some really fun promotions, but it was really about how do we preserve the brand? How do we keep our people safe? And I think probably the most exciting piece is that we're bringing people back. We've already brought a dramatic amount of our team members back from furlough, and we're excited. We hope Pennsylvania will go green, because I think that's the next step to getting not only us, but the entire restaurant community back to life in Pennsylvania.
I think that's fantastic perspective. And before we go on to Wendy, I don't mind sharing, even from our side at PMI, when all of this began, we asked ourselves very quickly, what can we do to help these companies survive? Maybe live action commercial shoots wouldn't be possible for a while, or certainly limited. Could we help them communicate in different ways? And we began pivoting dramatically towards building more of the animated and motion graphic heavy treatments for companies. And like Primanti's, we've seen a very good revenue stream, surprisingly so, throughout all of this. and feel very blessed to be able to continue operating as an essential business. So cheers
Chris,
to you on that, and feel free to drop off some of that liquor on your way home. I know
I will bring some for you.
Okay, I would appreciate that.
I think the one thing, and you hit right on it, there's been some really great suppliers step up in this space and think about how to help us in COVID instead of selling us something.
Right.
So we've had some great existing partners and some new partners. We brought a new partner in a tech firm that developed an app that ties to our thermometer that allows us to do a health check on our employees before they enter the building.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and they developed it in a week and rolled it out at very low cost, which is, they saw a need, designed it for the restaurant industry, and rolled it out fast.
And those are the companies who have helped during this time that people won't forget for sure, long after this. Wendy, obviously a big impact on a manufacturer. And I believe you may still be on mute there. I'm not sure, but there you go.
There we go.
Talk about that for us, if you could, kind of how All-Clad has been navigating this.
Sure. All-Clad's part of a group SEB, which is a global housewares company. So, much like PPG, we were involved very early on. We get one component for our product out of China. And that was very scary at first, thinking, well, how are we going to make product if we don't get this one component? That was the early on fear, which turned out to be not the biggest problem. We ended up shutting down and actually just restarted our factory yesterday. But as people are home cooking and people who don't cook are learning how to cook, the housewares industry is completely booming. Yeah. So we've got a situation in an industry where some brands get all their product from China, so we're out of inventory, and even us producing domestically, our factories are closed. So we are in a strange position here where business is booming and supply is very, very low. So as we reopen the factory, the number one concern, like the other brands here, is health and safety of our employees. So it's going to be a slow ramp up. We're focusing on what's most important, simplifying, getting the key items, and just making sure we can get those important parts back in stock, because consumers are really demanding new cookware as they're home cooking.
Consumers are going to be what brings us back, and quickly. I recall at a major business conference here in Pittsburgh, only about a week before, maybe a week and a half before the shelter in place came down, I was talking to an economist from out of New York City, and he said to me, "Christopher, it's going to be bad for a little while, but the underpinnings of this economy are very, very strong, and you're going to see a rebound. So keep the faith." I wish I would have kept his business card. I probably have it somewhere, and I like to call him and make sure he still believes that, because I'm hopeful, as we all are, on that. Thank you, Wendy. That's fantastic perspective. Going up to Kevin, if you could share with us kind of the navigation strategies, the impact to your operations, and kind of how the brand's responding.
Sure. Well, I mean, it affected every part of our business. So we lost 85% of our sales overnight. And so it really became a focus on how do we survive, how do we take care of our team members, and how do we help out in the community where we can. And from the team members' perspective, it's really how do we get everybody through to the other side. And that part of that was taking care of some healthcare costs and doubling our employee discount and providing free meals each week to our furloughed team members. And then also making sure that our team members who are still working were safe. But so that was a big early priority. But then from a marketing perspective, it was, okay, we're a startup. We don't have any sales. We need to grow. And a lot of that relies on what's been part of our culture the whole time. The reason we've been around for 70 years and have been able to evolve is that we are intensely focused on the customer, of understanding the customer, of adapting constantly to provide a better product for them. And that helped us to understand, okay, well, consumer change usually happens over years. Consumer change happened overnight. And so how do you understand these new behaviors, and how do you develop products? And, we leveraged what the brand's good at. People love our ranch dressing. Okay, well, we're selling it by the quart. People love our potato soup. We sell 50% more soup on Wednesdays because potato soup day. We said, it's available every day. Whatever you want, we will provide it to you. And week by week, sales just really grew. And so that's been really awesome to see. And then at the same time, we have scale in this community with our, 60 Eaton Parks and 10 Hella Bistros and our porch restaurants, and also our contract food service business in Parkhurst. And there was a real need in public schools to provide meals for the kids. Even though they were out of school, the schools still need to provide meals, and even extra meals on the weekend. So we were able to partner with PNC and United Way to leverage their resources along with our scale to provide literally nearly, the goal was 250,000 meals to kids. And so those are really the different areas we've been focused on. But it really went from planning from a marketing perspective for the quarter, for the year, to what's happening today and what are we doing tomorrow. And literally it's a startup mentality, move as fast as you can. We rolled out delivery in 2 days. We went to everybody pay ahead so we can be more efficient in 2 days. We rolled out a lot of these products very quickly. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. And I think that's the real thing with that startup mentality. Let's just try some stuff and let's see how people react to it.
They always say that necessity is the mother of invention, and you're describing that so perfectly. And I think also that incredible dual track strategy of helping the community while sustaining the business and serving where you can. Where can you keep the lights on? How can you serve? And I mentioned earlier, in our case, it's animation, motion design, using more B-roll and stock footage as opposed to going out with crews. I've seen all of my friends that sit in chairs like us as CMOs really turn back and say, how also can we serve at this time? Not just how can we sell? How can we survive, but how can we serve? And Kevin, you actually provided a beautiful segue to my next question that I'm going to share with everyone, which is, what specifically has your organization done during this time to serve the community? I think you've touched on some excellent points there, and I'm going to ask our fellow panelists to share that as well. In our case, we donated created and donated a number of spots for the Salvation Army, and for 412 Food Rescue's new door-to-door service, non-contact. But I'd love to hear kind of how PPG, Bryan, has been helping the community get through all of this at this time.
Yeah, thanks, Christopher. Yeah, that is a critical piece to our approach. And when we talk about iconic brands, I think it's so important that you look at your company and your company's purpose and say, how could we live our purpose? And that's what all the employees at PPG did. And I mentioned the protect and beautify and that protect piece. So we all said, well, living our purpose is really bringing to life the protect piece. So what we did is a couple quick things. We donated immediately to the China Red Cross. I had mentioned our facility in Wuhan, China. So they had an immediate need there, and we stepped in right away with a monetary donation. And then here in Pittsburgh, we're in the paint business. So one of the things that we have access to around the world is protective masks, and specifically the N95 masks that were in such high demand early on in the pandemic. So in Pittsburgh, we worked with the leadership of UPMC and at Allegheny Health Network, and we donated 20,000 N95 masks to both of those hospital networks.
Wow.
And we donated a total of 80,000 masks to hospitals in Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Detroit, New York City, and in Huntsville, where we have an aerospace facility. And then we also took one of our manufacturing facilities that produced automotive paint, and we stopped production of automotive paint, reconfigured the whole production unit, and began producing hand sanitizer for employees around PPG and all of our customers, including the Home Depot. And what was nice is, this is how again, going back to the brand, yesterday on the Home Depot's investors call, their leadership specifically called out PPG and thanked us for reconfiguring that whole site and then providing hand sanitizer for every Home Depot store across the United States.
Incredible.
And then finally, our foundation plays a key role. So, we quickly got with our leadership and the foundation board and got approval to donate $1.5 million to the food bank here in Pittsburgh. and then food banks across the U.S. Who are in desperate need. So all of those combined together has really been our protect piece, and we're pretty proud of those actions.
As you should be. We're grateful for PPG's impact on the world, for sure. Adam, Primanti Brothers, special moves during these times for the community that you guys have been a part of?
Yeah, I think the piece we focused on was local. So our restaurants at a restaurant by restaurant basis, a couple times a week are doing something local to take care of first responders, take care of school kids.
It's awesome.
From Johnstown to our Strip District location feeding Allegheny General Hospital. That's really where we focused on, is how do you get down to that grassroots level? How do we empower our general manager to be the mayor of the community? We said, here's what you go do. Here's how to do it. Gave them the tools and let them really build that relationship locally.
Excellent impact. Wendy, All-Clad's impact on the community right now?
Sure. As I'd shared, we're part of Group SED, which is a global organization, and we felt the effects much earlier. We were able to shift some of our production to produce ventilators that were so greatly needed across the world, and to donate those respirators.
Incredible stuff. And Kevin, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't skip over if there were any other pieces. I know you had mentioned some significant community donations during this time, the schools in particular. Anything else that you wanted to cover there?
That was the big one, but just like we always do, we get a lot of requests, and we kind of have been addressing them on a one-by-one basis. But I think that the main thing is that our culture is very collaborative, and people are, it's more like a calling. People are passionate about working here, and so people are just flock to those opportunities. We've got a lot of people making sandwiches for kids, and they just come together from all parts of our business to do it. And that's just a kind of a cornerstone of the culture that I'm always inspired by when I see it. And the crisis kind of brings out the best.
That uniquely Pittsburgh and uniquely American spirit of pulling together and getting through things. It's inspiring. And I think it's probably kept all of us sane over these crazy days that we've had. Okay, so staying on the topic for a moment of COVID's impact, and then we will be moving on to some other important areas. I would like to know, as the head of brand for your respective organizations, are there special steps that you personally are taking to keep your team motivated, focused? Are you using any new technologies or methods that perhaps weren't in place previously to kind of keep everybody rolling? We'll just go in reverse order. Kevin, I'll come back to you on this.
Well, I think the team thing is really interesting. We just communicate a lot more. I mean, there's daily meetings with the team, and we try to incorporate good news, and we've had virtual happy hours, and how can you, because part of that thing you miss is those unintentional collisions in the office, and
for sure,
those unintentional conversations that you have with people, and so you have to try to reach out. And I know our teams here are all trying to find new ways to stay in touch and collaborate. We have a creative design team, and they create a Zoom room that's open all day that they can kind of go in and out of.
Very cool.
And collaborate with. And so we're still learning, I think, every day on it. Zoom, didn't use Zoom before this, or very rarely. And now it's like everyday thing. So I think that every day we're learning, but that connection with people is really important. And like somebody mentioned, we thought this would be 14 days.
Yeah.
And so it was no big deal, 14 days, but now that it's been, 2 months, we got to continue to evolve and learn from it.
For sure. In our case at PMI, our office environment has always been so much fun, from the, rooftop deck where everyone hangs out and has drinks after work to bringing the dogs and the pets in the office. And it is really hard to recreate that from afar. But I can tell you in our instance, what we've done is we've adopted some technologies like Slack for communicating account by account and department by department. And it's really, really helped us tighten everything up. In many ways, I feel as though we're as close as when we sat office to office. And every morning we begin with, I won't really call it a scrum, but it's certainly a production meeting. And everybody gets a chance to talk about what they're working on for that day. Obviously, these things change hour by hour in some cases based on demand or, workload and things like that. And as I mentioned, we've been very fortunate to be, working at capacity right now, which is quite a miracle. But I think also for us, it's been trying to have the human side and understand that dogs and kids are going to run through on your Zoom call. You probably saw my dog here about a minute ago and kind of being cool about that and recognizing that we're now in people's living rooms. And not everybody is equipped to work from home, so you have to sort of have an extra measure of patience and just try to, have a human element to that. Okay, marvelous. Well, let me just go through the rest of you on this one, and we're going to make sure we have some time to get to the chat questions. But Wendy, anything you would care to share on your communication with your team?
Well, I will share the negative side of it. Majority of my team's still on furlough, so it's going to be a challenge to navigate that moving forward. Their uncomfort, transitioning back, but I found we've just tried to be more authentic and personal. I have 2-year-old twins, so they will call. I have employees who work for me who might be by themselves or just them and their husband, so they're pretty lonely. So my kids will call them on video chat because they know them now, and I think it's made it more personal, and it's made people feel part of a team to see my friends' dogs. And I call my friends, they're my coworkers, but it's created a much more personal connection being in their living room and getting to know them and their family. But being much less formal, I think, helped in that matter. If they see that I'm available on Skype, call me anytime. You might get me, you might get my dog, you might get my kids. And I think people appreciate that honesty. And hopefully it creates a sense of loyalty and commitment from myself, from my teammates, to the company long term.
Without a doubt. Adam, how about you guys? Are any special ways you're communicating with your team during this, keeping everybody sane?
A lot of the same. One thing we do, we have a text stream going. So it's the group that's around, which is full of memes that at least makes it light and bright. But same thing, we do a daily huddle every morning, which is Scrum, very Scrum-like, to try to keep and move fast on things. And, I've been relegated to my basement for my office, being in a dual working household. And I think my 3-year-old, we have, just like every Pittsburgh, I have a fridge in the basement. The popsicles are in that fridge. So she appears on many of my calls looking for a popsicle, which is, I think, added a sense of levity.
I can relate.
Yeah.
That's excellent. It's kind of fun. We all get to know our families again in different ways. And Bryan, wrapping with this question with you. I mean, obviously with a global organization like PPG, employees and team members spread out throughout, any special technologies or ways you personally are keeping your team together?
Yeah, just very quickly, a lot of the same things that the other panelists had said, but what I'll add is that for sure, communications has never been higher. So we do the Zoom calls. The things that I've been doing that are new is I leave periodic voice messages. I just record on my iPhone, just thought for the week, and I email that out to the team. I'll do an iPhone video message to the team once a week or once every 10 days, again, just with my thoughts. And then because it's a global team and I don't get to talk to all 50 plus people, each week I'll pick 3 people and schedule a 30-minute Zoom call with them one-on-one, and just to see how they're doing, how their personal things are being handled, how work is going, are they feeling engaged? So I think the layered communication approach has been something that I've been focused on with the team.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, at this time, I'd like to go to our Zoom group chat questions and encourage our audience to continue feeding questions in there. We'll start with one from Brian Bishop for any of or all of our panelists. Brian notes that there are a vast sea of options with digital outreach and social media out there. What are the top 3 to 5 areas you put your team's primary focus on? Feel free to fire away any of our panelists.
I can jump in, Chris. We focus heavily on social. We have a massive following, over 400,000 fans on Facebook. Facebook really became effective, even more than it was before, and the rates dropped by about 50%, which even made it more efficient. So we spend a lot of time there, content creation. We did a partnership with Giant Eagle to job share, which was really like the early on job sharing, to take some of our furloughed employees and send it to them. And we posted that on our Facebook page, and had our highest engagement of all time. Over 1.2 million people have engaged with that post, which is insane. And then the other 2 areas we're focused a lot on is our online ordering platform. Made some major user experience changes fast, really in days made changes that we were talking about. And then just pushing our loyalty program to try to ramp that up. And we've seen unbelievable results in growth in our loyalty program, not only in members joining, but have had some record sales weeks in that program. It really is a tool to use CRM to give messages to people that make sense to them. So if you buy kids meals, we'll send you a kids message. If you haven't bought a kids meal from us ever, you probably shouldn't see a kids message from us. So that's really where we've been focusing our effort.
Great.
Even pretty much all the above on the, social media on a much more rapid pace, email marketing, digital advertising, paid social, any way we can get the message out there. But I think what's also been interesting is that traditional media is also more compelling right now. In April, the ratings had like doubled because everybody's at home, but advertisers had pulled all of their advertising. So the cost was like half. So it gave us an opportunity to run Hello Bistro TV ads for the very first time. And that allowed us to get really broad reach quickly, and really dynamically grow that brand that we haven't had the opportunity to do before because we couldn't afford it for that brand. Eaton Park, we have the scale to do that, but Hello Bistro is newer. And so not only digital, but the traditional media also has been a great opportunity.
Excellent. Anyone else? Wendy? I think looks like you're trying to speak. Okay, we got you now.
Sorry.
It's okay.
So as we've shifted our efforts from brick and mortar traditional retail to e-com, we have our iconic factory sale every December and June, where we have thousands of people come to the fairgrounds to buy our product that is, a second. So, slight defects or excess, and that's not happening. So we used our email database, and we actually moved that digitally. And that's been really great because as consumers are trying to buy cookware and things for their families, they're seeing out of stocks in a lot of places. So it gave them an opportunity to buy some things. And we've also been benefiting from the discounts on Facebook advertising. So we've been able to access our consumers that way. But we're trying to also be sensitive and not capitalize at this time. So you kind of have to be careful with your messaging on how you reach out to people. But it's been
There's a real balance, isn't there? Okay. Well, Bryan, would you care to comment on this?
Yeah, I mean, we're using all the social platforms. I think to Wendy's point, one thing that's interesting is we really did have to shift the message and the type of content that we were putting out because it just would not be the right tone during this time. So that was one shift we did. The other thing on the digital side, it's amazing what a crisis like this does from a business model standpoint. And like the others, we really shifted a lot of the emphasis on the digital side. So a lot of the marketing specific from the business on the consumer paint side was tied to accelerating growth and opportunity in our digital channels. And just to give you a sense, on our own digital channels, the sale of consumer paint has increased over 100%. And then sales through third-party platforms like Amazon, so you could order paint from Amazon. And DIY has become such a big growth engine these last 2 months because people are quarantined at home. But through sales, digital sales through Amazon, it's increased over 350% for PPG. So it's been amazing from a marketing standpoint.
Great. Our next question comes from Eve Griffin. Hi, Eve. Given Pittsburgh's food scene evolution, how do these historic local brands keep up or strategize on competing with a food scene that has gotten very inventive and more health conscious and trendy? So obviously, Bryan, this one is not for you. But Kevin?
Well, one of the ways we've done it over the years is expanding our brands, so from Eaton Park to Hello Bistro, which is, an amazing build your own salad concept that also has burgers and fresh cut fries, but like it's a really amazing salad place. And we also have the Porch restaurant. So you can diversify your offerings through inventing new brands. But I think the other thing is also how people use restaurants. We saw, maybe 15 years ago that people were changing the way they use restaurants to do more takeout. So it's also not just the food, but also building pickup windows on the side of our buildings. We started that 12 years ago, and that trend has just exploded. And we can see now kind of what drove it is more and more online shopping. People are home more, and that drives them probably to want more interesting experiences, which I think has helped drive the explosion of unique, interesting restaurants in Pittsburgh. Because people now are either maybe looking for takeout, or they're looking if they're going to go out to find something really interesting. And so we've tried to kind of go after both of those markets. Very cool. Adam?
So we don't chase trends. We're kind of like the anti-trend restaurant. When anybody comes to present us a presentation on trends, we kind of ask for what happened 4 years ago, because that's the trend for our people. But and then from a health standpoint, although our things can be low in calories, you don't think of health when you think of Primanti Brothers. We tested the Impossible Burger. And if you read about the Impossible Burger, when we were testing it, people couldn't keep it in stock at restaurants. We couldn't sell it. We couldn't move the thing. I think that goes to the brand. You go to Primanti's in an indulgence, that a feeling, comfort food. You're not looking for a health experience. So it's an interesting brand to not chase health and not chase trends. Really be true to who the brand is. We have a couple salads, but it's really about the sandwich, pizza, and wings.
Brand authenticity at its greatest. Next question comes in from Aaron Watson. How do you think about audio branding? Do you think about the sound your customers associate with you? Anyone for audio branding?
For sure. I mean, I think you want to create memorable structures, so visually that's, your brand icons, but audio can also help make your ad memorable. We try to do it through, putting little elements of, Eaton Park's the place for smiles, put, that at the end of the ad so that people can see it. But, it's definitely a tool you can use, but you need to use it consistently. So you can't keep changing it, because people build up those memories.
For sure. Anyone else on that one? No. Okay. Paige Beal brings us a great question. Advice for graduating undergrad marketing students during this current environment. What wisdom can we impart to these folks that are coming out with degrees and not really able to celebrate with their fellow classmates? Don't all jump at once. You're trying to provide hope for the future.
I'll be glad to start.
Thanks, Bryan.
Yeah, sure. I would say that the job market is definitely going to be challenged over the next many months. But in the meantime, I would encourage those graduates in this profession to learn and to read and consume as much content as possible. There are so many case studies right now available on how to market and protect and your brand and reputation during this crisis. And I think the more that those students can really understand this moment in time and how it affects brands and what brands are doing, that when the job market begins to pick up, that is going to be probably a question that every interviewer is going to ask them is what did they think during this time? Did they have any thoughts from a marketing and brand standpoint? And they should be very, very prepared to share their viewpoints on this time.
Thank you.
I think I'll jump in. If you were just trying to enter the job market, I would say, if it were my kid, just get your foot in the door and be ready to be flexible and roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty, because everyone is learning and no one has the answer. And I think these are times where you can really make a name for yourself and learn things, skills, and flexibility and agility that are going to stick with you throughout your career. I think the final thing I'd probably tell them is lower your expectations. I know it's terrible to say that, but you just got to get in there, jump in and be excited. And good people will always survive. And these skills they're going to learn right now are going to be so valuable that I think that's an invaluable opportunity for young people.
Build your network as much as possible, whether it's the American Marketing Association or whatever group, get in, participate, get to meet people. And a lot of it, those are how opportunities happen.
Great. So looking at our clock, I see we're at 10 o'clock. We do have a couple more questions. Shelby, is it okay if we continue? Audrey, mind if we do one or two more?
No, why don't you get to a couple of those questions?
Sure. Next one coming in from Emily Martinez. How do you feel COVID will impact how you continue to hire talent within the marketing creative spaces to continue the growth of your brand and company?
I think the piece became more relevant is the ability to work on your own, self-motivation. The world of working in an office is definitely going to change in the short term, if not the long term. I think companies, including ours, have realized you don't need an office space the size we have. But the ability for people to be given a concept, an idea, and be able to run with it and not be managed is really key, because that's the only way we would have been able to achieve what we achieved. Is my team has stepped up, and they don't need to be involved in it. I don't need to be involved in every step. So I think that's really, as I think about, one, bringing our team back, but two, as you get back to growth, people that can work on their own, self-motivate, especially if they're working from home.
And I agree 100% with you, Adam. And I'm going to be looking for someone who's scrappy. Our budgets have been completely slashed. I just created a consumer-facing video. I would never have done that in the past, but people need to be willing to figure out how to do it themselves. And it's unfortunate, but we have to be creative and willing to learn and try new things and do things on your own, and also be able to take a step back when you have to.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I mean, I think one of the things that we've done is, like to Wendy's point, we started creating our own commercials because we need to create them fast and cheap, because the resources aren't there. We probably wouldn't have done that in the past, but now we're learning, hey, we can do this, and what skills do we need to do it, and what relationships do we need to move quickly. But there's a lot of things like that, and scrappiness, I think, is really the key in being open and flexible and ready to try new things.
Well, marketing is going to be very important in the comeback of this country and the comeback of this world. So I encourage all these graduates to get into these companies and just stay aggressive and delineate yourself from the competition, be hungry, and it's out there. Okay, couple more questions. Carlos Tribuno. Hi, Carlos. How do brands like Primanti Brothers or Eaton Park, how do you manage scale? And at what point does expanding far outside of Pittsburgh or beyond your core product, say the famous sandwich, hurt the authenticity of your brand? Great question.
So we operate in 6 states today. It's a little known fact. I was kind of shocked when the company recruiter called me for the job and said there was 40 Primantis. It's like, are we talking about the same people? But I think the key, we've made some mistakes along the way expanding. It's the same sandwich. It's almost all the same ingredients, except the bread is local in each market. People will say the strip district food tastes different, tastes better. It's different. It's not. It's the same recipes, same products. But we've been really diligent as we've expanded and expanded smartly in kind of concentric circles to take some of our existing team members, existing managers, and transplant them into the new market. So when we moved into Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, we took our general manager from Morgantown and relocated him to Camp Hill, and you immediately saw the culture come to life from that standpoint. We also look for where there are displaced Pittsburghers. That's where we do the best. There's a reason we skipped over Cleveland. I mean, it's just the brand does well when there's people that have that Pittsburgh tie, the Steelers tie, that at least builds a base that you can build from. But yeah, it's something we think about all the time as you expand. The worst thing you want to do is become a watered down version of the original. So we try to bring elements together, but the food's exactly the same.
Kevin?
For me, Parkside, Eden Park is a real Pittsburgh brand, and we have struggled a little bit as we've gotten too far outside of Pittsburgh. And so what we've done with Eden Park is we said, hey, let's reinvigorate it from the core. And that's why you've seen us tear down a lot of our restaurants and rebuild, and Banksville and Bethel Park and all over the city. But at the same time, when we created Hello Bistro, we thought consciously, how do we kind of leverage our roots, but make it a brand that could travel much easier. And so that was a kind of conscious decision. When we created that brand, is to make it a brand that could travel pretty far.
Very cool. Next question comes from Audrey. And by the way, for Wendy, the question is about All-Clad semi-annual sale. I do want to note before we ask about that, congratulations, Wendy, to you and the team on 50 years. You're celebrating your anniversary this year, and that's a big milestone. So can you talk a little bit about that semi-annual sale for us too?
Oh, sure. So as you can imagine, our 50-year celebration has changed. It went from a huge celebration of champagne and gold and excitement, very sophisticated, to our marketing strategy is celebrating the little moments. And we've actually pushed it out into 2021, but it's going to change the tone in which we address our consumers, because it's no longer applicable to the current lifestyle, but taking pride and joy in every moment and being home and having a meal to celebrate, the last day of school, or, just small things to make things special. So this has been an interesting learning for us. And then as we take a step forward into our day-to-day business, we always have our semi-annual sale, first weekend in, in June and December. And what's happened is we can't have that many people congregate. So if you sign up on our website, on our email list, or if you go into homeandcook.com, you can get on our insiders list to do that virtually. And I am so sorry.
No problem.
I muted my phone, but they're trying to get me on Skype.
We appreciate it. All right. If I'm looking in our chat and I don't see any other questions from our group, but I will wrap with one that I had. Oh, actually, there is one coming in. I will go to that, and I'll close with this other one that we had crowdsourced earlier because I think it's awesome. But Suresh Ramanathan comes in asking, if you were the CMO for a small consulting firm, what would you do to build a brand? So how would you build a small consulting firm's brand? Now, granted, your experience focuses from other types of brands and larger brands, but any advice for Suresh on that?
I think you need, it depends what your product is as a consultant, but you need some proven case studies. You need to show that you've had some success. And so sometimes you do that by doing work, finding somebody to partner with to give you that experience. And whether if you don't have it yet, or if you do have it yet, really being able to show tangible benefits, might be key.
That's great advice. Partner to get stronger and showcase where you have done good work. Okay, one last one I had here from the crowdsourced questions earlier. What do you do when your marketing plan isn't working? What steps do you take to quickly pivot? That could be COVID or non-COVID, actually, right?
I would say that one of the things, our marketing plan never ends the way it started, never, because you basically have some good theories and some things work and some things don't. But if you're not constantly measuring it to say, hey, this worked, or you may find, hey, this worked way better than what we thought, so we're going to scrap the other things we're going to do. We're just going to focus on that. But I think in marketing is just a process of constantly having good insights, developing strategies on insights, and then developing new insights as you go, and just keep learn and test and try things. Learning and test and trying. Yeah, experiment, right? Leverage new technologies might be another good one, right? Pivot quickly. Anybody else on that, Brian?
Yeah, I was just going to say, don't be afraid to fail fast. I mean, we're constantly trying to innovate from a marketing standpoint and try new things. As Kevin said, you measure, you look at the data. If it's not working, You say, you accept it and move on. That's all you can do, but you can't create and innovate if you're afraid to fail fast. So just move on.
But I also think sometimes you have to learn from that mistake too, to quickly pivot, but make sure you gather enough information so that you understand why, so that you don't repeat the mistake and lose that learning.
I think just one key thing related to that is that, you know, a lot of people make the mistake of learning from their competition, and you think, oh, well, they're doing that, maybe we should do that. But you never know if they're actually being successful. That might be an idea that completely failed for them, you know? And so it's much better to be, when you're measuring things, measure against your customer, measure against your target, measure against the experience you're trying to create. And don't just measure up against, are you doing what the competition's doing? Because you can't get ahead by doing that.
Great stuff. One last question, selfishly from my chair. What impact is video going to have for all of you in telling your story, welcoming back these customers into your stores and into your shopping experiences?
Video is huge. We now have an in-house videographer, and we've added resources so that we could crank out a lot more. It's video is important, and you got to have the capacity to create it.
Right. Excellent.
And I think for us, the consumers become more and more skeptical. So we used to have about, going back to maybe 3 years ago, where 25% of our marketing was digital, and now we're at 100%. It's critical for us to show, not tell. And using video and photography that demonstrates key benefits to the consumer is critical. So whereas before it was a nice to have, it's a must have on any product at this point to be able to demonstrate, so they don't have to believe, because consumers are very skeptical.
Excellent point.
Okay.
All right, Audrey. Well, I believe it is time for me to pass the baton back to you, and thank you for this opportunity to host this incredible panel today.
It's great. I want to thank you, Christopher. Thanks, Wendy, Kevin, Bryan, and Adam. Thanks for being great leaders and taking the time and doing this for us virtually. Really appreciate it. And thank you for letting us record it. We're also going to send a survey out to our participants just to continually get feedback, because we're always changing ourselves and always pivoting, and we're in the midst of that right now. So thanks for C-Level to sponsoring this and their support of us over many, many things in the Tech Council. And I mentioned earlier what their core capabilities are. I want to make you aware of some programming that's coming up, and you've probably seen it. Everyone gets lots of emails, but tomorrow we have our next Creative Industry Network. That's part of your Do-It-Yourself series, and we're focusing on updating digital marketing in these uncertain times. We also have a virtual career fair. So if any of you are hiring, we have a virtual career fair on May 27th. We'll get you that info. And we're pretty excited about doing that, because what's going on in our region is there are people that are hiring. There are people that, companies that are growing. There are companies who are rethinking their jobs and putting different kinds of opportunities out there. And then at the same time, there are companies who are cutting back. So we're hoping that this is opportunities for everyone to be a part of what's next for each and every person and each and every company. So we have a nice conglomeration of companies that are involved there. We also have next, let's see, it's next week on the 27th. The days blur to me. I can't believe we're almost through May. We have the global CIO of Zoom. You probably heard that they're opening up an R&D office in Pittsburgh in the East End, and we had been in contact with their global CIO, so it'll be very cool to hear from him. He's actually based in New York, and like many of their leadership is been sequestered for a long time, in particularly in New York. So it's great to hear from him. And then on Thursday, the 28th of May through Friday, the 5th of June, we're launching our virtual STEM Summit. If you have people like all of us who are home with kids, we're gonna have a window into some of our leading companies for about an hour each day, so that your kids can join, teachers can join. We've had hundreds of people already sign up, and we're very excited by that. So we're trying to make sure that people get access to what we've been doing and scaling that and opening up, the world, because you never know where our members, 10% of our members are actually located outside the region. So any way that we can support STEM initiatives and let people know about what the careers are of tomorrow, we're working on that. So we're busy, you're busy. Thank you for your time. It was great hearing from all of you, and we will stay connected and have a fabulous day.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks to our panelists, and thanks to the council for this great event.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.